Let's talk amplification for bass. For me, there is no one answer for everything. I find that in different venues or different situations, I have to basically cover myself with a different rig. Now, yeah, I do have a Fender Rumble 500 combo, and I'll take that to medium-sized gigs or even a rehearsal or something. I also have a little Phill Jones, which is great for rehearsals or if you had to do a very quiet party or something, play a hotel lobby, maybe a quiet restaurant. You can get away with those. And they do the job. You're never really pushing anything too hard with that. The Fender Rumble, though, I can take to a fairly sizable gig and push it hard. But it has its limits at high volume. It starts to get a little bit edgy sounding in the top end, but nothing bad. If you're not slapping or really pushing it in a hard way, it's actually quite good. Now, my main rig and what I prefer, especially tonally, and as far as the general response and attack of the note and just having massive headroom, I use an Alembic preamp, either the F2B or the F1X. The F1X has a DI in it, so you have that option. The F2B is a stereo version that does not have a DI in it. But either of those are the absolute best sounding preamps ever made. I don't care what you throw at me, those are the best. They're a tube preamp, very simple, but they have what you need, and it's a fantastic bright switch on it. And that caliber of tone is just unbeatable, and it has been for 50 years, and it continues to be unmatched, in my opinion. But I like to run a tube preamp, and then I like to run solid state power amps, and I like to run high power solid state power amps. I prefer something north of 3,000 watts, and I run up to 4,500 watts. I bridge my power amps. I like AB class solid state power amps. D class doesn't really do it for me tonally. I think they sound edgy and kind of raw, whereas the AB class amps are quick on response, very, very clean power, and just handle all frequency ranges excellently. I have used different amps over the years, but my favorite is not in production, of course, anymore. That's always how it goes. But it was a Carvin DCM 3000 or 3800L. And that amp just is astoundingly good on tone and response. Mates up beautifully with the Alembic tube preamp. They were made in the U.S., which was nice, and they've never let me down. Half my rigs have these in them. The other alternate amp that I found that I like a lot is the Samson MXS series. They're more powerful ones. I think there's a 3500 and a 4500. Those, once again, may not be in production. I'm not sure what's going on, but they were really hard to find. They didn't sell them over here much. But those solid state power amps, high power once again, AB class, and they are a really good alternate to these Carvins. Unfortunately, they're made in China, but I've had no problems. They work really well. Now, where they don't work well, these amps are switching amps, and they weigh about 14 pounds, but they're high power. And in order to get the high power, they have to have a switching system in them as opposed to a massive transformer like the old amps did, which weighed 50 pounds. So where these are not acceptable for me is in a situation where you're, say, at a festival, outdoor festival, or I played a big sound stage down in downtown LA where they ran all the power off of a generator system. And switching amps do not like generators because the power is all over the place. It jumps, it drops, it just is not consistent. And what will happen is in a switching amp, the safety system will kick in and the amp will shut down and you'll lose your output for about 15 seconds. And if you're in the middle of a song, that's not a good thing. So basically, I can't use these in a situation where you're running a generator to get power, or if you've got a really poor venue that's got their main power hooked up to like at a winery where they may have a refrigeration system or an air conditioner. When that air conditioner kicks in, it can really mess with the power coming in, and that'll once again trigger that safety system to shut down. So I have to analyze where I'm playing, figure out whether we're on a generator system or if you've got a venue with a really inconsistent power production. So then I need to have basically what's the old dinosaur to solve that problem. And so I've got my 45 pound SWR 750 power amp. It's consistent and it works well. And the reason why it works well in a situation where you've got inconsistent power is because it has a massive transformer in it, and that basically builds up a reserve of power so that when there are glitches in the power coming into your amp, it has that power reserve to smooth things out, and it doesn't trigger any issues with the amp thinking that it's getting a poor amount of power to it or too much power. So I keep this on hand. Once again, I'm using an Alembic preamp, tube preamp. This is a solid state power amp, and I used these back in the day before I started using these lighter ones, and they're great. It's just a drag to have to lift it. And at this point you're probably going, well, why don't you use the lighter weight rigs, the small little heads? And the reason why I don't is because, once again, virtually all of those that I'm aware of are D-class power. And I just don't like the tonal qualities of a D-class power amp. It's edgy, it feels kind of raw, and they're not 100% reliable either. I have a one-space MXS Samson 2800 power amp, and you'd think that would be just like those other ones, but it's not. It's a D-class, and it gets hot and shuts down. I've had other ones do the same thing. They get hot. When you're really pushing them at louder volumes and you go into like a slap solo, they have a thermal shutdown in them, and they all seem to give up the ghost at higher volumes. On a medium-sized gig where you're not putting the volume up much, you're not really pushing things, it's not an issue. But if you're really relying on it for big venue, stadium, anything like that, I can't recommend it. It's too unreliable for me. So I've got multiple things I use. I try to make things easier on me with some of the lighter weight stuff, but many of the jobs I'm on just require the bigger rig, and with the system here, I can use this Genzler as a single, but I like to use the 2 cabinets most of the time. These cabinets have been so reliable and unbelievably good. I mean, I've had them for over 10 years, dropped them down hillsides over at the Houdini mansion, rolling down the hill, and had all sorts of war stories with these things, and they've been completely solid, reliable. They handle 4,500 watts, no problem, never an issue. So for me, this is the best cabinet I've used. Best thing out there tonally for me too. I like to use 2 of them because then I'm running these amps bridged to get maximum power, and in order to get that maximum power I have to run at a 4 ohm load. So running 2 cabinets gives me that 4 ohm load, which then gives me maximum power out of the amp. So for me, if I could get away with this rig, that would be all I would ever need for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, power and the world are not entirely consistent, so sometimes I have to resort to the old dinosaur there. But tonally, this is the best. This is still virtually the same tonally, it's just heavier. And then using those, the combos, they're just convenient, but it is not my favorite as far as tone and response. But they are good, and that Fender Rumble surprises me how good it is. I can take it on a fairly loud gig, and that 500, will pull its weight, and that's the only D-class amp I've had so far that hasn't shut down on me for getting hot. So kudos to Fender for that one. But yeah, this Alembic tube preamp, the best thing ever made, period. And I wish they still made these Carvins. Great amp. So that's what I use, and until I find something better, I've tried a lot of things, many things, but this is the best sounding stuff. And I would say just be prepared, because each venue is its own nightmare.